Welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here with us tonight. It is our last meeting of the fiscal year. It's June 18th, 2019, and we are in Chapel Hill. I was told to let everyone know that our air conditioner is not working well. So, ladies, it's not you, it's the air conditioner. You'll probably see us up here doing the same thing. Just a reminder, please turn your cell phones on to silent. Thank you, Commissioner McKee. And thank you. If you want to speak to us about something that's not on the printed agenda, you can sign up in the back. There's a pad up back next to the door. If you want to speak to us about something that is on the printed agenda, sign up as well and just put what item number it is that you would like to speak about. So we're going to start with additions or changes to the agenda. And I have a few, but let's go around and see if anyone else has anything first. And I see none. Okay, so there is a consent agenda, item 8X, and that's on this blue sheet. That came to us after we did agenda review and after the agenda dropped, so we would like to add that. That is a budget amendment. I hope you all got to see that for aging. And if anyone wants to pull that at the time, we can, but it's pretty straightforward. And then I also emailed everyone to defer 11I, and that was for the Orange County Climate Council at-large position. Since we could possibly have a new a tax addition after budget tonight, we thought we would give an opportunity for folks to apply for that position that are interested in it over the summer, and then we'll come back in September. Hopefully the first meeting in September we'll make that appointment. So I just need to get a motion on those two changes, please.
So moved.
Second.
Vicki and Mark Hopless, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Against? Okay, and then we have two other items at our places. Handout for 6A and 6D is a PowerPoint presentation. Okay, and we're going to move to Katie Murray now, and she's going to introduce Mime.
Hello. Mimi Herman is the 2017 North Carolina Piedmont Laureate and a Kennedy Center teaching artist. Mimi holds a BA from UNC Chapel Hill and an MFA in creative writing from Warren Wilson College, and is the author of Legophilia and the Art of Learning. Her writing has appeared in the Michigan Quarterly Review, Shenandoah, Crab Orchard Review, The Hollands Critic, and other journals. She has performed her poetry and fiction at venues ranging from Why There Are Words in Sausalito, California, to Symphony Space in New York City. With her partner, John Yule, she offers Write-Aways writing retreats in France, Italy, New Mexico, and North Carolina.
So thank you for having me this evening. I thought I'd read a few practical and brief poems. So the first one is about, for those of us who are feeling the heat and are aging in a few other ways, it's called All the Lost Words. I don't like to believe that I am getting older and losing words because that's what we older people do. Or heaven forbid that I have been invaded by a small, non-malignant but stubborn tumor that has ensconced itself at the precise ganglion that leads to the tip of my tongue. It is indeed possible that I've always been forgetful, but that I've somehow forgotten just how forgetful I was. But I prefer to believe that I have unwittingly located a snag in the fabric of the universe, like the one located beneath the ribs of your dryer, through which socks slip, singly, sadly, only to emerge into the gentle light of a companion universe where people walk around warm in mismatched socks, uttering all those wise words I meant to have said. And I realize that often you get to say yes, but occasionally you may have to say no. So this is called How to Say No. Practice it plain, unadorned, and completely unmourned. Not, no thank you, or I'm sorry, but no, as it is. No sugar to sweeten it, no cream to soften it. Take it hot and take it black, but whatever you do, don't take it back. And because we do this for the good of the world and also for love, I'd like to read you a very odd love poem called On the Importance of Explanatory Text. I am the sort of person who stands on the edge of the Grand Canyon and reads the educational plaque before looking down. Even in museums, I experience vertigo if I stare first at a painting without first grounding myself in the title, artist, date of birth and death, and various media involved in producing the piece. A little interpretive verbiage is never lost on me. I need words first to appreciate the mystery of art or beauty, which is why I have requested that you take a few minutes from your day to compose a series of labels I can use to keep from being overwhelmed with dizziness at the sight of you in repose, or standing by the stove stirring eggs, or lifting 150 pounds over your head, or suddenly in a crowd where I hadn't expected you to be. I need a label on the dashboard of your car and another on the headboard of my bed. And just to be prepared, should I survive you, which if you don't mind, I'd prefer not to do, could you make just one more label to place above your headstone, something simple and complete that will help me understand, that will keep the vertigo at bay, so I won't fall off the earth you're buried in. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Very appropriate. Okay, we're going to move on to public comments, and these are for items that are not on the printed agenda. I'm going to call up 2 people at a time. We have 10 folks that want to speak. Commissioner Price will time you. You have 3 minutes. I'm going to start with Kurt Weinhardt and then Ann Crawford.
For the record, is Kit Wienert.
I got that
No
totally wrong.
problem. My wife and I have lived in Robbinswood for more than 30 years and raised a son who never experienced what we are here to talk about today. This is the second time my neighbors and I have appeared before the Orange County Commissioners about loud and repeated target practice gunfire. The first time was more than 5 years ago when we were told that the current noise ordinance offered us no legal protection. The gunfire problem in the Hatch Road St. John precinct has therefore steadily increased over time and is much worse than it has ever been. If the current county noise ordinance cannot be altered to address target practice shooting, I propose that a new comprehensive ordinance pertaining solely to target practice gunfire on private property be created and implemented. In my view, this would take into account type of weaponry, 2, distance from other residences, and increased home-to-home distance would be required near subdivision developments in the Chapel Hill-Carborough rural buffer, and a different, more lenient standard set outside that zone. 3, number of targets allowed on a property to limit the potential for concealed commercial or party practice activity. 4, time of day and length of occurrence. Target practice in the Hatch Road St. John precinct has nothing to do with a rural way of life. That argument is fundamentally flawed in light of the residential realities of the area. Also, it has nothing to do with Second Amendment rights. No one is trying to take anybody's guns away. I propose that the Orange County Commissioners develop and pass a new ordinance based on stricter rural buffer or town rules or on a zoning status related to population density. This ordinance would restrict gunfire to the same extent that Chapel Hill and Carborough townships restrict these activities. If deemed appropriate, the less densely populated parts of Orange County could retain the current more lenient noise ordinance. In summation, I urge you to act quickly by the end of 2019 to write and implement a new ordinance or amend a current Orange County ordinance that either reflects town law or is based on restrictions effectively used elsewhere in the country. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We have Ann Crawford and Kelly Hogan, please.
Shall I wait till she gets up here?
Nope, it's okay. She can have a seat on the empty seat.
I'm Ann Crawford. I have lived at 311 Warren Court for 32 years and have walked the woods behind my house. 3 to 4 years ago, I began hearing gun shooting from a house in the woods, in these same woods, just 3 houses away. I no longer walk in the woods due to fear. This gun shooting continues. We have heard continuous sounds like semi-automatic shooting and explosions. One Sunday evening about 6 weeks ago, I was doing dishes in my kitchen when I heard a very loud shooting in my front. Sounded like it came from my front yard. I thought there were snipers. It actually sounded like an army. I ran to the front window to see what I could do. The shooting sound kept going continuously. I was so frightened I was trying to find a place to hide from the snipers. Then I realized there were no snipers, just very loud, continuous gunfire. It sounded like the back neighbors had microphones on their guns to make it sound even louder. I was terrified. I called 911. I also call 911 when I hear the gunshot because I am terrified. I worry about the 3 small children, the 3-year-old children who live at the end of the street on Hatch Road, and the middle schoolers on our street. I worry about my property value. I worry about my safety. I do not sit on my deck. I cannot walk in the woods. Is this a way to live? Please revisit the present gun ordinance. Consider proximity to the city of Chapel Hill and Hillsborough, the gun shooting proximity. Include population density, family neighborhoods, churches, schools. Consider the noise of shooting and the neighbor complaints. Consider the types of guns, explosives, size of the shooting range, length of time shooting, a specific time for the practice. If I know it's coming, I can go to a movie. Consider the rights of the people who want to live peacefully in a quiet, family-oriented neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Kelly Hogan, followed by Carol Oscarhen.
I'm here tonight with my son, who's 15, and my husband. I bought my house with my husband 16 years ago, and we had become accustomed to some gunfire at times. We quickly learned that this was what living outside the city limits entailed. However, in the past 2 years, there has been a marked difference. A shooting range is now built. We have been told there's no evidence the range is commercial, and the rules have been followed, and that gunfire is an exception to noise ordinances. Yet, hundreds of neighbors, including young children and veterans, are exposed to noise like they have never heard before in our backyards. We ask you, our elected officials, how the rights of one landowner are superseding the rights of hundreds. We live in a rural buffer. We have continued to see development by our houses, and the county data show that the density of homes is increasing in the rural buffer. We are not true rural areas. We are somewhere in between city and rural. We ask that you consider what ordinances are within your control that you can enact to help protect neighbors like us in the rural buffer. I have so many questions for you, and I ask you to take our issue up on a future agenda. My questions are, can you be 100% certain that stray bullets won't land on anyone else's property with the type of weapons being used? How would you answer a neighborhood child who finds a stray bullet and asks, "Mommy, are we in danger? Is someone going to get hurt?" Are you concerned that valuable police bandwidth is being used up every time we call to check the safety rules are being followed when we hear target practice? Are you concerned about possible environmental impacts related to erosion, considering the truckload after truckload of soil brought in? Are you investigating potential impacts to our watershed and our private wells because of this soil, or the lead bullets now a part of our land? Is wildlife being affected by noise? Was the owner of the shooting range charged for the damages that occurred to the roads this winter and this summer from the continual use of dump trucks? Will our homes lose property value? What are you doing to ensure this is not a cash-based commercial enterprise? Are you worried, like we are, that there will be shooting parties that last for days that are technically legal by our current ordinances? Can we plan a graduation party or a birthday party in our own backyards ever again? Have you done all you can to protect the rights of hundreds of homeowners? We are organizing, and we are holding you, our elected officials, responsible for helping us. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Carol Osterkin, followed by Peggy Jennings.
Thank you for allowing me to speak on behalf of this important topic tonight. I've lived in the Stony Brook neighborhood for 25 years. My house on Wild Turkey Trail is adjacent to the gun activity and in direct firing range should a stray bullet in error be shot and not caught by the safety wall. I used to enjoy walking my dogs on Morgan Creek Trail by my house, but don't even see that as an option anymore, fearing either myself or my dogs will be hit by a stray bullet from illegal hunting or from the target practicing. It seems ridiculous to think I should take comfort in knowing there's a firewall in place and responsible people will handle their guns seriously for the intended purpose to practice their gun skills on a designated target. My concerns were validated after seeing a videotape on this homeowner's Facebook showing an adult shooting a gun that he did not have full control of and fired several shots into the ear and smiling afterwards. There was not a fear and a concerned reaction of, oh my God, did anybody get hurt? I never received a call from the police making sure I was okay on this day because there had been a mistake made by one of the shooters. Did the homeowner make a call to the police on this day, reporting there was an accident that happened at his home, and what measures should I take next? Did he ask, was anyone hurt? My guess would be no, as you see them smiling and laughing on this video. They knew they had erred and hoped they got away with it. That now is the way we live. I hope they're good shooters. I hope that firewall is high enough to catch all those bullets. On 3/12/19, I heard disturbing loud shots being fired in succession with our other loud bangs that sounded like bombs going off. I was so disturbed in my home that I felt compelled to call 911. I was told lethargically and with an obvious practice answered, the police knew about it and they were legally within their rights to shoot the guns. I made them aware I found a bullet in my neighborhood. This was important to come pick up the bullet. As I stood talking to the young, very respectful police officer, the noise started up again. We both reacted. I ducked down as if I was actually being shot, and with all the emotions that would elicit. The police officer's facial expression turned serious and asked me if I wanted him to go out and investigate. I said I did. Later, the same officer came back to get my name for the report. When I asked what he found out, he said he had another call in the neighborhood and never went out. He was just in the neighborhood doing paperwork. Is this what law enforcement position is going to be, lethargic, until something real and awful happens? No one wants to be the sad story at the other end of a stray bullet. We want to be protected now, to feel safe in our home and go back to enjoying our home. No one broke my window, and no one knocked on my door, but this homeowner successfully was able to rob me of thousands of dollars, decreasing my property values with this unwanted noise nuisance and safety concern. I'm asking you not to be lethargic on this issue. The current law, if it supports this aberrant behavior, needs to change. These behaviors have become more brazen, the weapons are more lethal, the noise more severe and threatening. This kind of activity, these types of weapons, do not belong in residential neighborhoods. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Peggy Jennings and then Brian Hogan. Peggy Jennings.
Hi.
Hi.
I've lived in Robbinswood for the last 3 years. I'm also a real estate agent, and I have two small children. I have an 8 and 11-year-old, and when those guns start going off, my children fear, and they run inside, worried that they're going to get hurt. And it's really disturbing. And I, along with all of my neighbors and quite a few other people, have done a lot of research trying to understand why this is happening. And I hope that you listen to us and do something for us. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Brian Hogan, followed by Riley Ruskey.
Thank you. I'm here to express my extreme dismay over how the rights of gun-owning citizens supersede those of the common taxpayer in this county. I'm well aware of the Second Amendment, and I'm acutely aware of North Carolina being a right to hunt and fish state. My issue is not with gun ownership, but the misguided law that somehow allows gunfire and the discharge of firearms to be excluded from our laws regulating noise pollution and noise ordinances. For example, I can be cited for a noise violation by playing classical music over 60 decibels after 8 p.m., but the discharge of firearms under current statute is permitted lawfully until 10 p.m. at night. A meta-study in 2014 examined 5 separate studies to determine the decibel level of common firearms. Of the 51 rifles and handguns studied, the noise generated by those arms ranged from 130 decibels to over 170 decibels. The conclusion was with some of those studies was using these firearms, those who use them should wear ear protection, and those in the surrounding 0.1 mile radius should also wear ear protection, including small children. Our neighborhood is full of children, taxpayers, law-abiding citizens, veterans, and many of us who work and earn our living by working at home. The disturbance of the peace brought about by this de facto firing range is wreaking havoc with our ability to peacefully enjoy our environment, sit outside with our families, play with our children, and work productively. One of my neighbors is a proud veteran of multiple conflicts in Iraq and Afghanistan. Can you only imagine what the sound of nonstop semi-automatic weapon fire does to a person like him? My neighbors have expressed their concern over this de facto firing range. It was built in a deceptive, in my opinion, deceitful manner without consultation of neighbors that might be affected. These landowners literally brought in thousands of pounds of landfill from we don't know where without permit and or disclosure of where the soil came from and what it contained. Further, when our community approached the homeowners, they were met aggressively. They were filmed. The occupants' license plates were taken down. It was made very clear that we were not welcome. I've lived here for 16 years, and the community of which we speak is in a high poverty area with one of the lowest home and property values in this area. If this is not a commercial operation, then how did the owners find the financial capital to purchase clean landfill, pay for the transportation of all that, bring it all in by bulldozer for over a 2-month period? Something just does not add up. I know what law enforcement will say when they come out. There's nothing we can do. I know what you'll say. There's nothing we can do. The state legislature's got our hands tied. I don't want to hear that. I want you to listen to your constituents and do something about this. Change this law ordinance, because if you don't make a change in this law ordinance, we'll remember come November and we'll make a change in who we vote for. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Riley Ruskey and Steve Hall.
Good evening. I'm a United States citizen, a combat veteran, and a legal resident and taxpayer in Orange County. I'm here tonight to talk about fiscal responsibility. Every citizen in Orange County has to live within their means. The budget you and the county management team have put together represents another excessive spending and taxing burden on the citizens you are supposed to faithfully represent. The budget you're voting on tonight has a spending increase of $10 million, 4.5% over the 2018 budget, resulting in a property tax increase of 2% on top of the 2018 increase of 1.5% on top of the property valuation increase, excessive layer upon layer of spending and taxing increases. Even the board chair called part of the 2019 tax and spending increase a slush fund in the recent work session. Having learned nothing from the GO Triangle $160 million waste of taxpayer dollars on light rail transit, you're now voting on an $8 million increase in funding for the bus rapid transit project, which is expected to ultimately cost $140 million. You already have numerous empty Orange County transit buses running around the county, spewing taxpayer dollars out their exhaust pipes. It looks like another $100 million fiasco is in the works. The citizens have to live within their means. Your budget is taking away their means and is a disservice to the citizens of Orange County.
Thank you, sir. Steve Hall and Seamus O'Neill.
Next week, the town of Carrboro will be considering a proposal to annex an area along Eubanks Road. This is an area right at the intersection with Old 86. This is an area currently in the joint planning jurisdiction of Orange County and Carrboro. This is the first step in what promises to be a very intensive development. My concerns are about the impacts to the adjoining area of Duke Forest. It's immediately to the north of this proposed development. This contains the Meadow Flats Natural Area. This has been designated as as a nationally significant natural heritage area by the Natural Heritage Program. It's also the site of ongoing federal research on atmospheric chemistry. There's currently a big EPA study going on at this site, and this development promises to have impacts both to the natural area and to this research, and to future research possibilities at this site. I would like to see that Orange County remain involved in the discussions about how this land is developed. And I would hope that before next week, you will contact the town of Carrboro and simply ask to remain involved in the decisions that affect this particular area. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Seamus O'Neill and then Mark Somerville.
I'm sorry, ma'am. Seamus O'Neill.
Seamus, I'm
Spelled
sorry.
Seamus.
I've probably done that before.
No,
I
that's
apologize.
all right. It's spelled Seamus, but pronounced
Just
Seamus.
spell Seamus. I don't know. I'll get there.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. 308 Charleston Lane, Chapel Hill, North Carolina is where I live. My original engagement with the Board of Commissioners is related to the Linda Sarsour speech that was given about a month and a half ago. But since then, I've been trying to engage with the Human Relations Commission on the issue of process, the process that led to her selection, and then the evaluation post-speech. But it appears that that there is no process at HRC, that's Human Relations Commission, for engagement with the public. So although the Chairwoman Storman was courteous, all the members of the commission were very courteous, there's no real vehicle for engaging at that point. So my belief is that even though they were perfectly willing to chat with me and listen to me, they don't have any rules or regulations for processing that information. So I've come back to the commission with my thoughts. So with your permission, I'd like to, if possible, turn over to your secretary the one page of comments I had about the process that's involved here, and is there a possibility for evaluation and possibly public engagement in this process that's used by the HRC and possibly your other commissions?
Sure, Seamus,
Okay.
we'll take that as a petition. If you could just hand it to the clerk.
Okay,
that would be
thank you
great.
very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. And Mark Somerville.
Yes, hello. I'd like to continue the conversation about the gun shooting that's going on. I live in Stony Brook neighborhood, and we hear this gun shooting more days than not. Sometimes it goes on for hours. It's not just high-powered rifles. Sometimes it's exploding targets too, so it sounds like a war zone sometimes. I would like to play a little snippet of what that sounds like at the end of what I have to say here. Based on the videos that I'm happy to send out after this meeting, you'll be able to see that the way the weapons are being handled is not in a careful and respectful way. It's kind of a joking way, and some of the people who are handling these weapons, who are, I guess, guests of the owner of the property, obviously don't have any experience handling weapons, and they're kind of shooting off crazy. I've heard bullets in the woods behind my house, and I know that's an illegal thing that's called unsafe operation. It's difficult to actually prove where the bullets came from, but that this is happening. The problem is that it's disturbing the peace of a lot of people, and it's way too close to neighborhoods. So with apologies to the audience, I know this is kind of disturbing to hear this. This is the kind of thing that we live with. So we're talking AK-47s and really high-powered machinery here. This should be like, if it's done at a gun range in the middle of the country, not in the middle of a bunch of neighborhoods scaring everybody to death. So if you could put this on the agenda for our next meeting, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I have no one else signed up. Would anyone else like to speak? Can you give us your full name when you come up, please?
My name is Lynn Gishwind, and I live on Salem Lane in Sturbridge, and we are right across from Stony Brook. And I just would like to support everybody's comments tonight that they've made about the shooting. We also have a neighbor that is behind our area who target practices for up to 2 hours at a time with heavy equipment, very, very loud, that traumatizes everybody. On weekends, you never know when it's going to happen. And no one's even mentioned, although it's much lesser problem, but what it does to the pets that you have is unbelievable. So not only do you have the gunfire going off, but you have dogs barking all over the neighborhoods, going crazy. My main comment is we had gutter repair done about a month ago, and the gutter company called my husband into the backyard. They found a 22 in our roof. Our roof is less than a year old. We called the police department, and a very nice officer came to the house and took the bullet and filed a report. He said to me, a bullet like this can travel up to 2 miles. So he said, I have no idea where this came from. It was in the roof over my bedroom. To say that we were disturbed about this is an understatement. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Would anyone else like to speak? Okay, so Commissioners, I think I'm going to take this as a petition that we bring it and refer it to staff, and we'll come back in September. I don't know if it'll be our first meeting, but we'll certainly come back in one of the earlier meetings with some sort of discussion about this. And I thank you all for coming out tonight and also sending emails. Very much appreciate it. Okay, folks, we're going to move on to announcements and petitions and comments by board members, and we will start to my right with Commissioner Markopoulos.
Thank you. So let these folks shuffle out here for a minute. So I'll start off with a brief report on our SWAG meeting last night, SWAG Waste Advisory Group. We had 2 really interesting presentations. One, a promising textile recycling company that's working in the Triangle area and has found a way to recycle a lot of clothing and textiles and make a little money off of it and share some of that money with the local jurisdictions. So there'll be more on that later when the group discusses it at our next meeting. And the other thing was an ongoing discussion on composting, on how do we deal with compost, how do we gather it, how does it get to, how does the food waste become compost and then get to the farmers and gardeners who can use it for fertilizer. And again, this is an issue that's been drawing a lot of attention. There's a lot of interest in this, so we'll hear more about that at our next meeting as well. And secondly, I have a petition. I would like the county to explore what it would mean to have childcare at our meetings. A lot of people can't come to the meetings because they have young children, and it might help a lot more folks get engaged and be here for issues that they care about. And another petition, it'd be really interesting, and I'd like to get a report on the costs and implications of going fare-free with our county buses. You know, with the goal of our transportation system of having maximum ridership, going fare-free would get the most people out of their cars and on the bus. And I think it's a worthwhile discussion to have in the fall. And lastly, we've been through this budget amendment process, and you know, this is my 3rd budget, and it went similarly to the other years where as we got familiar with the budget, which was released on May 2nd, we came up with amendments that we wanted to propose to help the budget, in our opinion. And so we did, as we always did. When they came to mind, we proposed them, and the list grew over several weeks. Some of the budget items were somewhat controversial, and people wondered, well, why did you wait to the last minute to do this? And of course, you have to wait until the budget is released before you can amend it, so it had to happen in May. You know, we had school budget amendments draw a lot of attention, understandably. It usually involves more money than other amendments, and people care deeply about the schools. So I'd like to see us have a work session in the fall where we think about what we've learned from this year's experience and how maybe we can set some deadlines. Maybe the school budget amendments need to be turned in before our school budget work session. The two we had this year occurred after that, so it was kind of late in the process to really give them their due. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Bedford.
I just want to take this opportunity as a new commissioner to thank each and every one of you who's spent a lot of time on the phone, lunches, meals, mentoring me as a new commissioner, and especially the manager, assistant manager, every department head, staff that had orientation meetings before we go on this break. And I very much appreciate your time and effort with all of that work to try to get me up to speed. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner McKee.
Yes, I'm going to endorse Commissioner Markopolis's call for a discussion in a budget, not a budget work session, but a work session in the fall to discuss the amendment process. This is my 9th budget process that I've gone through. We changed the process in 2016, thinking we were going to make it better. I think we made it worse. This process, for me, almost became dysfunctional. And the reason was that amendments, yes, they come in. No, you have a bit of a problem getting amendments to a budget that has not been released. But to what extent we need to have these amendments in early, because a lot of these amendments, and there were multiple pages of amendments, came in after the public hearings. They came in after June the 2nd, which was a couple of days before our last meeting on June 4th, where there would be public comment even accepted before tonight. So we need to look at the process and try to figure out if there's some way we can make sure that the public has ample notification and ample opportunity to speak. Interestingly enough, on some of these amendments, I started getting calls on the 1st and 2nd day of June over the weekend asking me about them, and I referred them to the website only to find out myself that these amendments were not listed on the website. I had thought for 3 years that these amendments were being posted on our website as we brought them forward. They were not. So I guess word of mouth on some of them started getting around, and that was the only way that public notification happened.
Thank you. Commissioner Price.
Okay, I'll just echo that for the third time about talking about our budget process at a work session in the fall. But other than that, since this is the end of our, the end of our season and school is out, and I just wanted to congratulate all the students, whatever grade that you were in, for completing another year and moving onward. I guess a lot of folks had graduations this month, so just congratulations to all of them. And then two other just comments or announcements. Juneteenth is tomorrow, so to many people, happy Juneteenth. It's the day when African Americans and our allies remember, reflect, and rejoice in our freedom, which was hard fought and still continues. We had a celebration on Saturday at the Cedar Grove Community Center, and many thanks to everyone who joined us in that day of fellowship and lots of food and fun. And then on July 4th, the town of Carrboro will be hosting their annual community reading of the meaning of the meaning of July 4th for the Negro by Frederick Douglass, which he gave back in 1852 in Rochester, which is my hometown. So, and that is open to the public as well. So, happy summer.
Thank you. Commissioner Dorson.
Yeah, so I think it was last week or sometime recently I made a petition suggesting that the county ban the use of Roundup or any pesticides using glyphosate, which is a highly toxic herbicide. And I was happy to see we got an email earlier this week from the Parks Department noting first that the county staff does use Roundup, on county grounds and landscaped areas to control poison ivy and weeds, but also noting that in May, a pesticide herbicide working group was formed, and that as this group is going to be looking at the county's current policies and practices, it will cease the use of Roundup while that group's work is pending. So I was very happy to see that, and happy to see how quickly we were able to take action on that, and glad to see we won't be using it anymore, at least till we hear from this committee. I would just say on the budget stuff, and maybe we'll be talking about that shortly. So I think I think it is tricky to get amendments before we have a budget. But I think one thing that we maybe can push those add more public hearings or public meetings. Or, I mean, I also do think it's important. I mean, to be able to amend the budget after we hear from the public as well in response to that. So one of the things we might do is think about having meetings where there's other opportunities for public comment during that process, whether it's a budget public hearing or whether we decide to take public comment at work sessions, for a half an hour in front of those. But I think the process is, I think we're somewhat constrained about, having ideas before we see. I mean, if we have ideas in advance, we can certainly bring them. But I do think part of the amendment process is reacting both to what the manager brings forward, to what we hear from staff in those work sessions, particularly the ones where we go department by department. So I think that there's perhaps different approaches to figuring out how we do that. I also, in the conversation last week, I don't know if this was a formal petition, but my amendment about school funding inequities didn't get any support as an amendment, but there was general support from you all about looking at that issue. So I would like to petition that that issue comes back to us in the fall. Maybe it becomes, it gets put on the agenda for the school collaboration group so the school boards can be involved. But I would think this board should also have a discussion about that. And in the spirit of doing it, and not whether it ends up in the budget or not, but doing it outside the pressures of the budget process. And really, I think, obviously, we want to have our partners engaged, but also think as the only board that's accountable for every student in the county that I think all of us need to engage in that. So you might have taken that as a formal petition last time, but if not, I'm making it as such at this time.
Got it twice now. Thank you. Commissioner, let's go down. Commissioner Green?
Thanks. I think all of those budget ideas are good ones, which I would support. And like Commissioner Bedford, I want to thank all the veterans for the help that I got through the process. I thought it was for me, it was a rewarding process and a good learning experience. In terms of activities, I went to the Triangle J Council of Governments Executive Committee about 10 days ago, where we gave our permission to pursue a grant opportunity or accept a grant opportunity from the Federal Home Loan Bank Board of Atlanta's affordable housing program to do home repair projects in Chatham County. That's a really good thing. It was just a few years ago when I realized that the federal home loan banks were really into housing, which is a good thing. Chair Rich will talk more about this, but she and I and Katie Murray, our arts professional, spent several days in Minneapolis recently at the Americans for the Arts conference. Americans for the Arts is the premier nonprofit in America that supports arts organizations from the ground all the way up, and it was inspiring. We learned a lot about both that we're on the right track to think of Orange County as really needing to boost the arts economy because we have so many artists here and they need visibility, and we need to work with them to improve that aspect of the economy. But also a special interest of mine is the reinforcement of the idea that the arts are not an elite activity done by people who have special talents only. The arts really need to be integrated from early childhood on and be part of the way we live, because arts are a part of the way we live. So that was also very encouraging to have that idea supported.
Thank you. Commissioner Price?
Just a comment to Commissioner Dorson's petition about the Roundup. You may want to check, or staff may want to check, there was a group here in Carrboro, actually was the first job I ever had back in 1991. It was the Ag Resources Center, and I think they became toxic-free NC, and that was one of the things, I think they're still in existence in Raleigh, but that was one of the things that we did, was try to get Roundup and other pesticides out of our environment and out of the schools and out of playgrounds and things, so you may want to, staff or someone may want to check with them as well, because the research has been there for decades.
Okay. Commissioner Markopoulos.
Real quick on that same topic, I communicated with a resident who asked that whatever information comes out of that county committee be shared with the other governments in the county. She was from Chapel Hill and wanted to make sure that that information got to them and others.
About the Roundup?
Yeah.
Yeah, and Carrboro's banned it a long time ago, I think back in 1999, so.
I think so, too. Okay, y'all, we'll follow up on that. No worries. I'll be quick. I just want to make note that Dr. Charles Vanderhorst is a friend of mine, passed away. And I'd like to think that we can do a proclamation for him in September. He was just an amazing civil rights person. He was one of the first people to, a doctor to tend to AIDS patients when doctors wouldn't. And then he went on to do research in AIDS when doctors wouldn't. So I'll get together with everyone and we'll put a proclamation together, hopefully for September. His funeral is today, but they have not found his body yet. So we're just keeping the family in our minds. I had also had a great time in Minneapolis. I learned so much. It was an amazing trip. Something that we are doing here, I think we are on the right track. I think Katie's doing an amazing job. Every seminar I went to, every opening, we all took time to honor that we were on stolen land, and it was just pretty amazing to me that every single seminar opened that way. We also heard from the mayor, Jacob Fry, who Sally thought was a teenager, but he's actually 38. And he ran on an affordable housing platform and was able to get $40 million in the budget for Minneapolis affordable housing. And with that, he was able to use that for leverage to get an additional $10 million from private public partnerships. So we're talking about $50 million. And you can actually see it in action there. If you go to Minneapolis, you can actually see that happening. So that was exciting. We also heard from Jeremiah Elson, who was from Ward 5, is a traditionally African-American neighborhood. And then I went out to actually visit that neighborhood to see what they were doing with the arts. And it's phenomenal because they moved gardening and foods into the arts as well. So that all came forward. And then we heard from Andrea Jenkins, who is the first transgender elected official in the country. And she's a councilwoman in Minneapolis, and she was just fabulous. She just, they're all about the arts there, and it really showed. I, too, want to thank the commissioners. The budget is really never easy. The staff works really hard, the manager works hard, the commissioners work hard. We just don't come up with a budget and here we go, and then we're doing it. And I know we've been getting a lot of emails, and there's been some Facebook posts that might make you take what's being said personally. I encourage you not to. We are not in competition here when we do a budget. We need to be collaborative, and we need to be collaborative with the school board, with our municipalities, with all our departments. This is not a competition. And so I think that we have to remember that as we're going into our next year discussions. So as soon as we vote on this budget tonight, I know staff takes about a month off, but then they're already going on to the next budget. So the idea that this just happens poof out of the sky is kind of hard to read. I also want to make everyone aware that we speak to our school boards often we have school collaboration meetings that are, if not quarterly, more, and the county manager meets with the school superintendents on a monthly basis. So we do know what's going on with the schools. We are constantly having those conversations. They are not only happening on May 30th. So just keep that in mind, that we are a collaborative bunch. We want to continue to do that. We respect all of the other boards and all the other board members. We know that they work just as hard as we do, and we really appreciate that. Okay, with that said, we are going to move on to proclamations, resolutions, and special presentations. And thank you, ladies, for hanging with us and learning a little bit about democracy here. We're going to move to proclamation recognizing the Carrboro High School women's soccer team for winning the 2019 State 2A Championship. The board will consider voting to approve a proclamation recognizing the Carrboro High School women's soccer team for winning and authorize the chair to sign it. So Commissioner Markopoulos is going to read that. And Coach, why don't you come up? And ladies, if you could just stand behind the coach, that would be great. Commissioner Markopoulos.
Sure. I'll first of all, I'm Coach Jared Drexler, head coach. We definitely have more players than this, but it's the first week out of school, so a lot of families are on vacation. Let's see if I can get everybody right here. So we have Dara Bubel, Katie Rhodes, Sarah Wesley, Danny Kaufman-Cedeno, Lauren Jellick, Julia Connor, Amanda Brickner, thank you, Lucy McDaniels, and Navia Mosley.
Welcome.
Whereas, whereas the Carrboro High School women's soccer team captured the North Carolina High School Athletic Association State 2A Championship, and whereas the Jaguars won all but one match this season, compiling an excellent 18-1-2 record and a perfect record of 10-0 in the Mid-State Conference, and whereas under the guidance of Coach Jared Drexler, the Carrboro High School women's soccer team has won 4 of the last 5 state titles, and whereas through their hard work, dedication, teamwork, and commitment, the team and Coach Drexler brought honor upon themselves, Carrboro High School, the Chapel Hill Carrboro City Schools District, and Orange County. Now therefore be it proclaimed that the Orange County Board of Commissioners expresses its sincere appreciation and respect to the Carrboro High School women's soccer team for their outstanding achievement and their inspiration to youth across North Carolina through their dedication, teamwork, and athletic prowess.
I need a motion.
So moved.
Second. Second. Comments? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Against? All right. It is approved. Ladies, can you come on up here so we can get a photo?
On behalf of the team, I would just like to say thank you
Please
very
do.
much.
Yeah. You could turn around so we.
I know, yeah.
Yeah.
Give him the proclamation.
Hey, you got to hold this. You got to hold this.
Yeah, someone get hold of it. There we go. Hold on one second, moms. You can come closer. Don't take photos from back there. Come on up. And Dad, sorry.
Congratulations. That's quite impressive, 4 out of 5.
Thank you.
Congratulations, man.
Good job.
Good.
Oh,
really?
Good job. Yeah, good job. Yeah, good job. Yeah, congratulations. Have a good break now. Yeah, summer.
Kudos. Well done.
4 out of 5 is impressive. Straight up.
Okay, Todd, do we have anyone here from East Chapel Hill High?
I don't believe we do. Doesn't look like it. so
Okay, do you want to just read the resolution for us then, please?
I'll have to come get it, Paul.
Thank you.
So Coach Collins sends his regret, but he is on vacation in Europe, so it was not an easy trip for him to get back here. But this is a proclamation of recognition on East Chapel Hill High School women's soccer team winning the 2019 State 3A Championship. whereas the East Chapel Hill High School women's soccer team captured the North Carolina High School Athletic Association State 3A Championship, and whereas under the guidance of Coach Austin Collins, the Wildcats compiled a sterling record of 22-2 and 13-1 in the Big 3A Conference, and whereas the East Chapel Hill women's soccer program has won 4 state titles in school history in 1998, 2000, and 2004 prior to this season, and whereas through their hard work, dedication, teamwork, and commitment, the team and Coach Collins brought honor upon themselves, East Chapel Hill High School, the Chapel Hill Carrboro City Schools District, and Orange County. Now therefore be it proclaimed that the Orange County Board of Commissioners expresses its sincere appreciation and respect to the East Chapel Hill High School women's soccer team for their outstanding achievement and their inspiration to youth across North Carolina through their dedication, teamwork, and athletic prowess this, the 18th day of June 2019.
Thank you, Todd. Need a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Bedford and Price, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Against? Okay, thank you, and you make sure to get that. All right, Commissioners, we have a request to move 8T, which is on the consent agenda, up to possibly the regular agenda because Ms. Bailey is here and would like to speak on that. We don't need to keep her here all night. So if anyone has an objection to that, please let me know. If not, we will, well, maybe we'll move it up to the 6 at the beginning, so you can come first. Is that okay with everyone?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so 8T is being pulled, and Ms. Bailey, come on up. And folks, so this is, the board will consider voting to approve a resolution transferring ownership of the 2 manufactured homes to Empowerment, Inc., as well as authorize the county manager to execute all needed documents as it relates to the proposed transfer of property, subject to review and approval by the county attorney, and authorize the chair to sign. The manufactured homes were purchased under the previously approved Orange County Land Banking Manufactured Home Park Initiative Displacement Mitigation Assistance Program, or DMAP.
Madam Chair, thank you, and Commissioners, Madam Town Manager. I am Dolores Bailey, Executive Director of Empowerment Incorporated. I brought along with me my property manager, Valencia Thompson. We are honored to have been a part of this pilot program. We have 2 families that are living in homes purchased through this program who are happy, who, I don't know if you'll remember, and for those commissioners that were not on the board, the first gentleman, Mr. Arianes, was in a mobile home that was going to be moved or done away with. This program allowed us to search the mobile homes around in all of Orange County. We found him something very comparable to, well, the home was better than what he was living in, but the location was comparable to where he had been before. Very happy man, along with his family. They are completely anticipating purchasing this home from Empowerment. They've lived in it for an entire year now. He's done well on paying his lot rent and his the price that he needs to pay. All of his numbers have been done well. He's kept up with Empowerment. We've kept up with him as one of our tenants. The other one young lady who has purchased a unit living in Chapel Hill, again, another very, very happy and satisfied person. This would not have happened without this program being established, and we want to thank Ms. Hampton for thinking of it and making it happen all the way, and also the commissioners for also approving it. The other thing I wanted to say is I was here before, not long ago, and told you we were heading towards 60, so this makes 52 for us, so thank you. We're getting there.
That's great. Thank you, Dolores. Okay, so I need motion now on 8T, please.
I have a question.
Yes, sure.
So if the unit is purchased by the owner, by the resident at the end, that's how where does that money go? Does it go back into this fund to the Rapid Rehousing Fund, or?
Ms. Hampton?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, Commissioners. Yes, the funds are returned to the county to go back into the land banking fund.
Great.
It's a great program. And if I could just say one other thing. Oh, come on up. You got to speak in that microphone.
The beauty of that is giving people an opportunity to own a home when they would not qualify traditionally with the bank. And so empowerment kind of acts as that in-between bank. The year that we built into the program was so that a person could build up that reputation and show us that ability to make that mortgage payment or something similar to the mortgage payment. And because of the way the program, again, is laid out, the way Ms. Hampton created it, the reduced price of the home is going to be in a range that's comparable and comfortable for the potential homeowner. So we've already worked those numbers out, and the gentleman, I think I shouldn't have said his name before, but anyway, is going to be able to stay in the 30% area mean income.
That's great.
Fantastic.
Very good. Thank you. So we have motion by Commissioner Green. I need a second.
Second.
Second by Price. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against? Okay. Thank you, Dolores. Thank you, Cheryl. Okay, let's move back to 6A, and this is approval of the fiscal year 1920 budget ordinance, county grant projects, and county fee schedule. The board will consider voting to approve the fiscal year 2019-20 budget and ordinance, grants, projects, county fees, and we do have a handout at our places. And who is going to be doing this? Bonnie?
I will
Travis?
introduce Paul, the Assistant Director of Finance Administration, and he will guide you through the approval of these 6A and B.
Good evening, Madam Chair and Commissioners. On item number 6A, last Tuesday night, June 11th, the board made decisions on the 2019-2020 budget. Based on those decisions, attachment 1 in your packet is the resolution of intent to adopt the budget that the board voted on and approved last Tuesday night, June 11th. From that resolution of intent, we formed the actual budget ordinance, and that is attachment 2 on your packet tonight for your consideration. And attachment 3 are the fiscal year 2019-20 county grant projects that are receiving new funding for 2019 and 20. And then attachment 4 is the fiscal year 2019-20 county fee schedule that we reviewed the other night as well. So I will turn it over to you for comments, questions, and consideration of this at this time. So,
Questions for Paul? Comments for Paul? Comments about anything? Commissioner McKee?
Yes, as I stated last Tuesday night, I have objections to several items in it, although I think 99.9% of this budget is needed and is good. My objection and aversion to dedicated taxes, my concern over our own salary increase without due process of discussion by the public, multiple other things that I mentioned last Tuesday that I'm not going to bother about going back through. I will basically intended to, stated last Tuesday night, and our Arts Moment speaker, Ms. Herman, outlined it quite succinctly. I will vote no, without any elaboration.
Other comments? Commissioner Price?
I'm going to vote for the budget. However, I do have an issue with the quarter-cent tax for the climate change. Two main reasons. One, we're already doing so much of the work already, and to make it sound like we're doing something new and innovative is misleading. And secondly, it's when I looked at all the other fees and fee increases and the tax increase, and, you know, talking to people in the community, you know, I realized that this could be, for some people, the proverbial straw that breaks the camel's back. So I'm opposed to the tax, but I'm in favor of the work. And I will vote for it, but just to know that I do disagree with that one part of the budget.
Additional comments? Okay, I see none. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Commissioner Thorson.
You know, no, never mind.
You sure?
Yeah.
Save it for another day?
Yeah.
Commissioner Markopoulos.
I think I said it all last week.
Yeah.
So the budget is, in many ways, a bundle of acceptable compromises that we make. And one of the things that I'm always reminded of when we work on the budget is that we have an obligation to a whole lot of different interests in the county. For instance, so many people said, we need more money for the Chapel Hill Carrboro school system. Well, I recognize that. We struggle with the limited resources and the position that the state puts us in to have to make these tough decisions. We have human services, we have public safety, we have so many competing interests. And we also have the people in the Orange County school system district that, they're less wealthy than Chapel Hill and Carrboro, and they seem comfortable with the balance of their tax rate and the quality of their schools. And so you don't hear so much from those people about, please tax me more for the schools. So we have to balance all that. And I just remember one particular encounter that I had when I was campaigning a few years ago. I was in Eflin. And of course, when you're campaigning, schools is always a very big issue, right? So a lot of people from Chapel Hill Carrboro schools were saying, you got to support the schools. You got to make sure we get, all the funding that we need. And then I was in Eflin, and this elderly woman came up to me, and she said, when you get elected, don't let those people in Chapel Hill raise my taxes, because I'm on a fixed income, and I just can't handle it, right? So I always think about having those two people at the table together, right, to sort of signify some of the competing needs in Orange County. And I think that this budget, has done a really good job of meeting the needs of the county under difficult circumstances. There's never, nothing is ever fully funded, right? So I'm proud of it and proud to support it.
Thank you. Commissioner Dorson?
Yeah, so I appreciate that comment, Mark. I'm concerned that, and I know what you're saying is sincere and from the heart, but I'm concerned that those comments like that contribute to the division in the county. That there's this competition between the two districts, and that and that the perception that one area of the county is subsidizing another area of the county, which is not true. And I also think, last week we talked about this. People said, you said and others said people in Orange County are happy with the schools. They don't want to pay any more taxes for the schools. Well, I think it's important to note on the record that the Orange County School Board, which is the elected body charged with determining what the school board needs, asked for almost $1 million more than we gave them. So the elected officials charged with determining what is in the best interest of the children in Orange County schools didn't say we have enough money, don't give us any more. They said we want $1 million, we need another $1 million. And that ought to be, that interest ought to be recognized as well, right? So I think it's important to note that. I also think it's important to note that I think your points about how we balance everything are really good ones. But I think part of what we have to balance is the different interests and different areas of the county. I also think it's important to note that that the way the county, in this county, the way we fund schools is in a lump sum, right? The school gives us a budget, and we don't go line by line and say, we'll fund this, we won't fund this, we'll fund this, we won't fund this. We could. I think we have the statutory authority to do budgeting like that, but we don't. We give them a lump sum, and they determine how they're going to spend it. They give us a budget, which is a guideline, but ultimately, they decide what the priorities are. If they don't get as much as they ask for, they decide what has to get cut and what doesn't have to get cut. And so the idea that we funded this and not this and this and not that is not accurate. In fact, if you remember a couple years ago, I was pushing us I was pushing the schools to bring those custodial positions in-house and make them district employees. And both districts said, well, that'll cost a lot more money. You'd have to give us a lot more money. And I said, well, I'd be willing to do that. And school board leaders said, in a meeting, said, well, if you gave us that money, that's not what we'd spend it on, because that's not our priority. So I think it's just important, as we're talking about this budgeting process, to be clear that, that if the school district decided they wanted to take that money and give the superintendent a big bonus, they could do that. I mean, they'll be politically accountable, obviously, but we don't have, the idea that we chose to fund this and not this and this and not this is not accurate. So I just think that's important to note as well. And I do think, again, hopefully we'll have these discussions in the fall about these very questions. And, some of the stuff we said last time, I think it's time to really, engage the entire community and figure out what how they feel about school funding and whether it's enough and what is enough. And, but I think, we can all relate anecdotally to someone said, don't raise my taxes. Someone else said, I'm happy to pay more taxes for schools. I heard that from parents in Orange County, and I heard that from parents in Chapel Hill. It wasn't all one way or the other. So, I think that has to be put into the broader context.
Commissioner Green?
I want to note a very small exception to that point about the non-designated funding that we give, and that is that we did fund the full amount that was requested by the 2 districts for racial equity training, and I'm glad that we were able to do that. And I know I'm not alone sitting up here in supporting that work and encouraging both districts to do everything they can to hire minority teachers and to correct that inequity as well.
But that was an initiative from the manager, that racial equity, $200,000, wasn't it? $260,000?
It was a request from the 2 school districts and in the recommended budget.
But it was your best judgment to say, let's just do that as a direct line item. We will take care of that.
Yes.
That does not go per student. It was just, the county will pay for that.
Right.
Commissioner Price?
Yeah, and to that point, one of the things that I have noticed over the years being here, and I don't have children, so obviously I didn't have children in the school system, but just listening to parents as they were raising their kids and, hearing the rivalry between the 2 school districts was kind of sad. That one school district thought they were better than the other, and the other felt that they were maybe a little less. So, I hear what Commissioner Dorison is saying in terms of trying to bring some balance to the school system, because it was really disheartening to hear the rivalry just because of where you lived. And as far as please don't raise my taxes, to Mark Markopoulos, I just want to say that's one of the reasons why I wanted to hold back on that $0.25 additional taxes, because there are people that said, please don't do this. And so I'm just giving voice to them.
Okay, folks, let's move on. So we're at 6A, and the manager's recommendation is that the board adopt the 2019-2020 budget ordinance, FY 2019-20 county grant projects, and the FY 2019-20 county fee schedule, consistent with the parameters outlined in the board's resolution of intent of adoption and the FY 2019-20 Orange County budget. So I need a motion, please.
So moved.
Bedford?
Second.
Seconded by Dorson.
Oh, I have a question.
Yep. Comments?
Do we need to also include, remember how Durham Tech wants us to allow the scholarships to be used also for not just the 2 years, but also for some of those other technical classes? I can visualize the page, and it's not in any of this that I was reading Sunday night, so I certainly want to support that, and I don't know what the process, it just hit me, what the process is to do that. Do I add it to this?
So, no, I think that what you're doing now is you're approving the amount of money that is recommended in the budget, and how that's used, we will work that out with Durham Tech.
Thank you. Okay.
Additional comments? Okay, all those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Against?
No.
Okay, so we have 6-1, thank you. Let's move on to B, Paul.
Okay, 6B is the capital investment plan, asking you to accept the 5-year capital investment plan and approval of the CIP projects for fiscal year 2019-20, which is year one of the capital investment plan. The total of that is $48,050,906. If you look at the attachments, there's an overall summary of the capital investment plan. And if you look at year one, that is the $48,050,906. Attachment 3 lists the county capital projects of $10,560,764 for fiscal year 2019-20. And then attachment 4 lists the school capital projects totaling $34,512,606 for fiscal year 2019-20. So again, I'll turn it over to the board for questions, comments, and decisions.
Okay, questions and comments on the capital investment plan? Okay. So the manager's recommendation is that the board accept the FY 2019-24 Orange County 5-year capital investment plan and approve the funding for the 2019-20 as stated in attachment 2, year 1 2019-20 in the capital investment plan, and adopt the 2019-20 county capital projects as stated in attachment 3, and FY 2019-20 school capital projects as stated in attachment 4.
So moved.
Moved by Price, second by McKee. Comments? All those in favor? Aye. Against? Okay, and that passes unanimously. And C, Paul, please.
C will be, I believe,
Yes,
Housing.
C is housing.
Oh, housing, I'm sorry. Okay.
You're all done with
Thank
your
you, Paul.
budget.
You're done, yeah, all right.
Going to Disney World.
Welcome, Cheryl.
Good evening
I
again.
got caught up in the budget thing, so.
That's all right.
All right.
That's the money. We can't do anything without it. Good evening again, Madam Chair and Commissioners. What you have before you is a request to approve the FY 2019-2020 Annual Action Plan and the proposed uses of those funds. We received less than we did last year. We received $350,302, if I got that right. It is in your abstract. And last year, we got $401,000, a little better. So you see how we're using it, and we also propose to use some of our FY 18-19 CHOTO funds. And why we are doing that, we have only 2 CHOTOs, and now we have 3 CHOTOs in the county. So we have improved that, and we're able to better utilize all of these home funds. As you will note on page 2, the project's categories range from rental acquisition for single-bedroom units, 1-bedroom units, to home ownership for Habitat for Humanity, and again, the countywide tenant-based rental assistance, which will be used 2 ways. One, to leverage the local resources for the new local voucher program. And I'm happy to report we have, in 2 days, some 945 applications have hit that new web portal that was put in. But a portion of those funds will be used for that, and a portion of the funds, $25,000, will be used to bridge a gap. As it's bridging this year, we do not have, the state did not fund rapid rehousing, so we are doing a targeted tenant-based rental assistance. And that's what the funds will be used for again this year. The targeted tenant-based mimics the tenants or components of a rapid rehousing, but because of the source of the funds, which are federal, we had to tweak it. So we don't want to say it's a rapid rehousing full all out, but we're calling it a targeted tenant-based rental assistance, and it is targeting the homeless in the county. So you will note that the local voucher program has a preference for homelessness or persons at risk of homelessness, as well as the targeted tenant-based rental assistance. Those approximately 10 individuals will come directly from the coordinated entry list, and we'll work with the Partnership to End Homelessness and Ms. Corey Root and whoever her interim while she's out on maternity leave. We will work to get those 10 families or individuals directly from the home list that the coordinated entry does for the month. So I will stop down. We ask for approval of 3 things: to approve the annual action plan, to approve the use of funds, and to approve the manager to sign any and all documents related to our FY 1920 home program funding.
Thank you, Cheryl. Questions for Cheryl? Commissioner Dorson.
So I think last time we were here, empowerment had not become a CHODO. It looks like from this that they have now become. Is that correct?
That is correct. That's the 3rd CHODO we have.
Congratulations to you, Ms. Bailey, and to Empowerment and to your staff. That's a great victory for the people, and that will mean more resources available for affordable housing in the community, and also increase the range and the breadth of work that Empowerment can do. I know that's an arduous process to go through to get that certification, and so it's a tribute to your and your colleagues' determination and fortitude and tirelessness. So I appreciate that very much, and this is very exciting. And at the appropriate time, I'll move all 3 of these resolutions.
Ms. Bailey, do you want to come up?
I stayed because Ms. Hampton reminded me about this. We are so excited to be a CHODO now, and you're absolutely right. We've worked long and hard on it. Ms. Hampton helped us finally come around this curve. I promise you, we've been working on it for about 10 years to make it happen, and we are going to do some outstanding things, mostly around rental, a lot around the mobile home piece of it. We are ready, set to go, and so thank you all for this opportunity to move forward in this direction. And while we were sitting there, I challenged my property manager to tell me how many homes we had actually, and she said, with the new homes, with the 2 mobile homes, it'll just be 50. I said, no, I don't think so. You know I've been at this for a while. So I made her write them out, and it's actually 54 that we're at now, so I'm excited. So thank you again so much. I appreciate it. Thank you, Ms. Hampton and crew, for helping us do that.
Thank you. Very, very good. Great news. Additional comments, questions?
Yeah.
Yes. Commissioner Green.
Yeah, so I appreciate all the good work in the 2019 annual action plan. And isn't it correct that we're coming up to the end of the 5-year consolidated plan that we have? Then what's the process for working on the next one, or is it already being worked on?
No, the process, we will start it. The county will start it in the fall. My recommendation to that is first the selection of a consultant, which will bid out. We will work through the county's procurement office and work with all of the jurisdictions to get the tenants that they want in this RFP. That RFP will go out. We will then look to make sure that we engage. There is a citizen participation process that must be followed. All of the groups, we will work with planning from their part. We can work with economic development, and then there are a series of public meetings that the residents of the county can provide. So all stakeholders from the county will be involved. That's all of our nonprofit partners. That's some that may be non-traditional, some of our human service providers, other county departments, and then hearing from the public at large and pulling data and all of the updated data. So these are things that go into that next 5-year, because your 5-year plan drives your annual action plan. And so your goals and priorities are very key and very important that the county gets that right going forward in the future.
Additional questions? Okay, so manager is recommending that Well, I guess Ms. Hampton already told us all what we're doing, so let's just go right into the motion for that.
Mark?
I'll move all three of the resolutions.
Second.
Comments? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Against? Great, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Madam
Appreciate it.
Chair and Commissioners.
Okay, folks, let's go on to 6D, and this is an amendment to the Orange County Transit Plan to increase funding for the Chapel Hill Transit North-South Bus Rapid Transit, also known as NSBRT project. The board will consider voting to approve an amendment to the Orange County Transit Plan to increase funding for the Chapel Hill Transit North-South Bus Rapid Transit project from $6.1 million to $11.1 million. The funding would be provided using dedicated transit revenues. And we have Travis.
Thank you,
And we
Chair
also have
Rich.
Brian. Welcome, Brian.
So as we were going through the work plan for fiscal year 20, I mentioned that we would likely be asked to approve an amendment to the transit plan that increased funding for the Chapel Hill North-South BRT project. We are here today. What I thought we'd do is Brian Litchfield from Chapel Hill Transit will provide some project background and answer any questions, and then I'll go through sort of the financial modeling component. So with that, Brian Litchfield.
Welcome, Brian.
Thank you, Travis. Good evening, Madam Chair and Commissioners. Thank you for having us this evening. As Travis mentioned, give you a little bit of background on the North-South BRT project. Some of you that have seen similar presentations over the years that may have seen some of this, but I know that we also have some newer commissioners, so we'll share a little bit of background, talk about where we're at and the funding. So BRT project, the corridor for this runs from the Eubanks Road area along I-40 down Martin Luther King through downtown campus, down 15501 to Southern Village, with the terminus just outside or inside of the Southern Village Park and Ride at this point in time. The reason that we're interested and have been exploring this, that we started studying this project back in 2012. If you go back, previous transportation plans before that talk about BRT in this corridor, but we've been working actively on this since about 2012 as a result of the system that operates in the corridor is currently at or near capacity, especially during peak hour. We're currently doing 4,500 rides a day within this given corridor. We're looking at BRT as a result that this is a scalable long-term solution that allows us to build out within this corridor, not only potentially further north up towards Hillsborough, but also potentially south. And the other corridor that we have planned to review is the 15501 corridor from East Town through downtown into Carborough and perhaps as far out as White Cross. But that's something that for the future to review. It connects with regional transit options. This connects with express bus services that are coming out of the Triad area, which are operated by PART, the Piedmont area transit system, provides express bus service down 40 or 8540 into campus. It provides connections there, obviously connections to Go Triangle and their express services both at the Eubanks Park and Ride, downtown, and at campus. It was also at one point in time meant to integrate with the previous light rail project, but again, this project can move forward and was planned to operate with or without that project. It supports current and planned development within the corridor, and one of the things that we've been sharing with folks and reminding folks is this is just not a bus project. This is an investment in improving transit in the corridor, but also a multimodal investment that's going to improve access for pedestrians and cyclists. Give you a sense, I think many of you are familiar with the corridor and probably, if not been in that corridor, at least in a vehicle, you've seen some of these things where the infrastructure for bicycle and pedestrians varies based on where you're at. Some places there's very nice bike lanes, although the vehicles are moving very, very fast. Some places there's no infrastructure. In other places, even with the speeds, there's kind of shared infrastructure. There's sidewalk in big sections of the corridor, but there's also sections where there's no sidewalk. So one of the things that we've proposed as part of this project are 11-foot on both sides shared use paths that would be implemented as part of the project. So that would allow for protected, dedicated bike and pedestrian access within that corridor for about 84% of the corridor. So it'd be a significant investment in providing those those connections and improving those connections throughout the corridor. The only place that we're really challenged and would have difficulty doing that, as you can imagine, is through some sections of campus, especially around the hospital area, which is fairly well built out already. But 11-foot paths on both sides from Eubanks out through Southern Village. So we've got a technical and policy committee that has been guiding this project since its outset. We've added folks over time, and some folks have changed, but the technical staff includes working staff from all of the entities represented here, including Orange County, Theo, and others are on the technical side of things. On the policy committee, Commissioner Dorson is your current rep, and Travis also attends that as part of that as well too. So the committees are guiding the work on this, and they're making recommendations before recommendations go to the Chapel Hill Transit Funding Partners or to the town of Chapel Hill. So where we're at overall in the federal process, there's a lot of information on here, but to my left, the North-South Corridor study, I mentioned we started that in 2012, finished that in 2014, and moved into what we're currently in is the FTA project development phase. We're moving through that, which is 30% design and environmental work. Once we get done with that, we would need to be approved to move into engineering and then additional approval to move into construction. So our current timeline, we'll talk a little bit about that later. Best case scenario, we're talking 2023 for implementation, but that requires all the stars to align perfectly on the federal side. So that is the earliest we could possibly implement that, maybe a little bit later as depending on how the federal process works out. So again, on the corridor where we're at today, we're doing 30% design and environmental work. 30% design is going to help us identify how the corridor will operate, especially from kind of the Eubanks down through Estes and Hillsborough Street. We're looking at different options, whether we're going to use an existing lane or have to add a lane. We're doing quite a bit of traffic analysis and other work. And I think many folks know this, but the corridor that we're working in, it's all controlled by NCDOT. So we're going to have some recommendations on that from our consultant team that we'll work through with our council and others, but the ultimate decision is likely going to come down to what NCDOT is going to accept in that area. So we're also doing the development of the integration of the bicycle and pedestrian work, and then also the stationary analysis as well. So our basic schedule for this is we're moving through 30% design throughout the summer, and coming up here in July, we're going to have several community workshops and planning sessions to kick off kind of the stationary design and work around that. This says September of 2019 to apply for an FTA rating. We received an email from them today asking for us to, if we're going to submit that, we've got to submit it by August 23rd now instead of September. So they've changed their process and schedule for that, but we anticipate doing that, which would, once we're rated, that would allow us to get a sense, and I think some are familiar with from the light rail project, that'll give us a sense of how we'd score within that federal process and give us a better sense of of our potential to get federal funding, depending on how that score breaks out, which everything at this point indicates our score would be, we'd do really well. That'd be a sense for local decision makers to decide whether we should continue to move forward or make different adjustments based on that scoring. So again, the earliest we could implement service would be 2023, again with all of the stars aligning on the federal side.
Now, or do you want to wait till the?
Well, he's almost done. Do you mind?
I don't mind. I
Okay.
defer to you, Captain.
Yeah, let's finish up and then we'll go.
Okay, so as I mentioned, over the summer, we're working to finalize the traffic analysis with DOT and other folks that are involved with that. We're initiating market and transit-oriented design study work. We're going to start with some community planning charrettes in July, which will be a multi-day event that will allow folks to come and provide input and feedback. And again, remind folks that as we're looking at the transit-oriented design, stationary design, this is going to be one of those one of the first input sessions that we have for that. There will be other opportunities in the future. We'd like to have a draft of our 30% design by the end of summer and completed the environmental analysis as well. So funding where we're at today, our scenario calls for total project funding of about $140 million. Obviously, that'll be refined as we move through the 30% design work, and we'll have more refined numbers as we move through that. But at this point, $140 million, 80% will come as projected to come on the federal side, $28 million from non-federal sources. In order to request the ranking that we are rating from FTA, we need to show that we've got at least 50% of that non-federal share in place. Again, this says by September. Again, we found out today we have to have that by August 23rd. So that's why we're asking for the additional $8 million from the Orange County Transit Plan to bring our total to $14.1 million, which would meet that 50% of the non-local requirement. I'd also note, as we've shared in the write-up for you, we've submitted a request through the state for the spot process for $25 million. So once those are awarded, or if that's awarded as anticipated, we would come back to the three parties to the Orange County Transit Plan, to the implementation agreement, and discuss what our funding needs are at this point, or at that point. So if they fund it to the tune of $25 million, the $8 million that we're talking about tonight would likely be something that we wouldn't need at that point. But until we have a better sense of that, and they've said we're going to fund it to this level or that level, we need at least the dedicated funding at this point to move forward in the federal process. So I think with that, happy to answer any questions. Of course, project website's available for those that are interested in more details, but happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thanks, Brian. Okay, let's start with Commissioner Dorse.
So just to go back, that last slide on the Spot 6.0 process, is there a estimated time on when we might know whether that any money comes from that?
Well, it's a state process, so I would say estimate with all due asterisks and that sort of thing, sometime after the start of the next calendar year, likely. So if not before then, but that'd be that's our best estimate at this point in time. So it'd probably be January, February before we'd know that. So.
And then in one of the earlier slides, the one that has, it's the one that has the current, it's called current status. It's got the map. It's the one that says 30% design. Yeah, this one. Mm-hmm. So I just want to be clear that on this chart, am I reading it right to say, like, pretty much everything from Eubanks to Hillsborough, where it's dark green, light green, dark green, light green, that's all to be decided, which way it's going to go. That's all in the, it's either going to be dedicated, convert, or construct. That's not light green, dark green, light green, dark green, where they've made any decisions, right?
Right. That's the part that we need to do the additional traffic analysis and work with DOT to help us determine whether we can do convert an existing travel lane or whether we have to construct a lane. So that's why it's showing that dash. It's to be determined based on the traffic analysis and further input and guidance from Chapel Hill Town Council.
And then from Hillsborough down to Southern Village, though that's been determined, it's going to be dedicated curb lane convert from Hillsborough to, say, Manning, and then it's going to be mixed traffic to 54, and then it's going to be construct from there to Southern Village.
Right. Well, that's been, and the construct part too, again, as we move into 30% design, one of the things that we'll be looking at will be, were there potential ways to phase the project as well too? So that area further south, since there is a reasonable amount of right-of-way there, that may be an area where we could say initially, perhaps we don't need we'll need dedicated lanes at some point in time, but perhaps we don't need them in 2023 or 2024. So that would be something potentially where that could be put to a future year. But again, we'll have to go through that analysis to determine if we did that, would it really be less expensive in the future to do that, or would it be more cost-effective and efficient to do it on the front end? So, but that's an option that we'll consider as part of the 30% design as well too.
More questions? Commissioner Price?
With regards to the, the hopeful spot money that you get, so if that doesn't come through till next year, so just explain to me the use of the $8 million, which, I have no problem with giving that, voting for that this evening, but what happens with that 8 million if the 25 comes in?
So if the 25 comes in or somewhere near that, what would happen is we would come back to the staff working group for the Orange County Transit Plan and talk with them about what we would need, if anything, at that point in time. And the discussion would hopefully be we could reduce that 8 million to some number less than that as a result of us bringing in the 25 million from the state if they fund to that level. So what we're asking for at this point in time is a commitment to the 8 million until the spot process, the current 6.0 process plays out. And then at that point in time, we discuss with the staff working group, which would then lead to further conversations with the Board of Commissioners, Go Triangle Board and the MPO about what money, if any, would be allocated after that point.
Okay, so the 8 million won't be used right away. It's just a commitment at this
Right, that's
point
it, right. So,
okay.
I'm sorry. So, yes, so I believe we're showing that in the plan from 2022. We're showing that in the plan from 2022 on. So we don't need that money to do the 30% design or the work that we're on now. We need to show FTA that if the project were to move forward, we've got funding that would be dedicated for construction, final engineering, and that sort of thing.
Okay, and then this really has nothing to do with the funding, but when you do the charrettes and you get people's input, then when you go back to the drawing board and start working on it, will you then come back to the community for another round?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
That's a great question. So again, we know that timing is can be challenging for the summer. However, we needed to do the work in order to inform our was going to be September, now to be August submission to FTA. So what we'll do with that is once that's done, sometime probably mid-fall, we'll come back and say, here's what we learned, here's what we developed from the July sessions, here's where we're going. And then even from that, there'll still be time to refine that as we move, if we move beyond the 30% design as well too, because it really will only be informed to that point.
Thank you.
I have a question. Can you go to the next slide? Well, next one more. Okay, that picture in the upper right, where you have that's the BRT running down the center of the lanes, correct?
So that's not an example of our BRT project. That's illustrative of what we're going to be looking at, potential TOD design sort of work. So that's not a picture of what we envision happening necessarily in the Martin Luther King corridor, but it is an example of what some of the TOD work might, could lead to as we develop that over time. So this is, I should have wrote illustrative only, but likely not something that would happen within our current corridor.
Okay.
No.
Yeah, because it just doesn't seem representative to me at all. So maybe take that one out. I guess thank you for answering all the questions I sent over earlier. I appreciate that. Sure. Some of my questions were just getting a little bit into the weeds, so we don't need to review them. But my concern is, I'm certainly all for the funding and all, but I guess my concern is how. Sort of what Commissioner Dorson is saying, as a BRT wiggles in and out of its own lane versus in the middle of traffic. I'm not quite sure how that flow works. And so, as you're talking about charrettes and understanding what a BRT is, that would be helpful for me as you're moving in and out of these sort of dedicated lanes. How does the traffic keep flowing?
Sure. So that's a good question. Again, in this area here, I'm sorry, hopefully the cursor's showing up here, Martin Luther King from Eubanks through Hillsborough, this is going to be, we've not determined yet if this is going to be construct a lane or convert. So there's likely going to be, it's going to be likely one or the other for a majority of that corridor. So what we're going to try and do is minimize the transitions from one area to the next. So that area is being discussed, and as we move and evaluated as part of the 30% design. So when 30% design is done, basically from Eubanks here through Hillsborough, it'll either be dark green, generally either dark green or the lighter green color. So that's to be determined. As we move to Hillsborough Street into downtown, there'll be some transition areas where our buses are pulling out of those dedicated lanes into mixed traffic. don't know, some of the folks that have been up to Richmond, they've seen their project, how their vehicles transition from the center running lanes to mixed traffic. There's signals that allow that to happen. So we would do something similar in those locations where buses would be transitioning from a dedicated lane to just a standard travel lane. So we'd work to implement that. Not only would there be signage and the signals, but also probably different colors related to transition areas for buses for different colors of paint and things like that to give folks a sense of that would be happening. So again, we're going to try and minimize that. And really, frankly, and those that are familiar with this area, on some level during peak hours, both AM and PM, from Franklin Street, actually I had from Rosemary Street through Caroline Inn, kind of that the outside lanes kind of operate kind of as de facto bus lanes already, because there's anywhere from 12 to 18 buses lined up in those lanes at a lot of peak hours anyway. So that would continue. It would just be a dedicated lane in some of those areas.
Okay, so there's a follow-up question to that. So
Okay.
you just talked about all those buses that are going around anyway, and this is one of the questions you replied to me about, and I was concerned or just curious about if the BRT comes on, or when the BRT comes on in 2023, what can you do with the other buses that are now on that road as well? So do we eliminate some of those buses and use those buses for other service? Or would they just sort of work their way out of the fleet?
So, and there's a two-part answer to that question. So, this investment is building upon the investment that's already been made in the corridor, and we're currently running 10-minute service in this corridor today just on the NS alone. That takes 8 buses. This August, that number is going to move to 10 as a result of an investment the Travel Transit partners are making in it. And by next August, it's going to move to 12 to 15 buses and provide 8-minute or better service. So we're going to be getting close to achieving BRT level service in that corridor just with investments the partners are making. So we'll be replacing buses that we need to replace. Some of the underlying local service like the A or the T route, some of those routes that come into the corridor from other locations are likely going to be realigned to better serve different areas in that corridor. So we had developed a service plan for this several years ago when we did the initial planning study. As we're developing our new short-range transit plan that's going to come online next August, we need to rework all of that as well. So there'll be some of those services that are reallocated, but also good news is that we're really moving forward with making investments in this corridor already that basically we're going to be leading to doing capital replacements with hopefully with this BRT project as it moves forward. So.
Awesome. Good. Commissioner Green?
Yeah, along these same lines, it looks like getting to Manning and East Jackson Circle and back to Mason Farm and out back to South Columbia is going to maybe not always run on schedule. But the question I have, which I've raised before and I don't remember your answer, is the South Columbia from Mason Farm down to 54 is a wide road. Why could there not be dedicated lanes on that segment?
So from Manning Drive? I'm sorry, from Mason Farm
down to 54.
Well, that was one of the things that when the initial LPA was adopted, or prior to that being adopted, there was really strong feedback provided by the neighborhoods in that section that asked that section not be, that area not be adjusted or impacted by any sort of widening or adjustments. So one of the things that was agreed to at the time of the initial LPA being adopted back in 2014 was that we would not expand beyond the current the curb-to-curb area from Mason Farm down past James Taylor Bridge. And that was part of the area of kind of meeting the community interest in that area. The project, the evaluation is that we could do that and potentially operate in that area without any significant negative impact to the timing of the project or the service.
So the existing curb-to-curb is not wide enough for bus lanes and 2 lanes of traffic?
Perhaps. We can take a look at that. Again, we anticipated operating within mixed traffic within that corridor because there really are no stops in that area. We're just simply moving through. The last stop is near the ACC at Mason Farm, and that the next stop would be at just past 54 there. So we can take a look at that. But again, that's been something that is one segment where has been consistent since 2012 and how we would operate in that area.
Well, I'll just say I have a lot of experience with that segment in my neighborhood, and it can get sticky there, and it just seems to me like that's really going to slow. I mean, to me, I think Commissioner Chair Rich has said this on more than once, or maybe a lot of us have. The difference between a dedicated lane and being in mixed traffic is really the difference between, I know that technically they're called BRTs a lot of times, but it's really functionally the difference between a bus rapid transit and an express bus, just that general express bus. The real benefit of bus rapid transit, of course, is that you can rely on it like a clock, like a train that's going to be on time every time, and that's what I don't see happening unless you have a dedicated lane.
Well, we agree, and again, I think the important thing, almost 80-some-odd% of the corridor is going to be dedicated lanes. So the only section right now that's not is the small section of Eubanks that is kind of what it, look like when the developer is done doing that now, and then kind of the Manning Drive through South Columbia to the James Taylor Bridge. So those are the only sections at this point in time that would not be dedicated lanes. So 84%, almost 84% of that corridor is going to be dedicated lanes. So
I'm just imagining,
it's substantial.
I'm just imagining after a basketball or football game gets out.
Yeah, well, again, the basketball game, those events like that are going to be challenging in that corridor, and in Martin Luther King corridor as well too, throughout whether we have dedicated lanes or not. And I think that's also something that we're working with in conversations with DOT and the university is how would these dedicated lanes work during events like that as well too? Would they continue to be dedicated lanes, or could they be open to other traffic as well too? And I think that's one of the questions that we're working with DOT and others to potentially resolve.
Thank you. More questions? Commissioner Markopoulos.
Are there going to be platform stations at every stop, even in mixed traffic areas?
So that's what we're planning at this point. Now, again, the stop potentially at Manning near the hospital. We have to work through. We've got to work through that with not only the university but also with the hospital. But the idea for these stations within the corridor was that they'd be level boarding stations. So buses would pull up, and the base of the door would be at the station, so someone could just walk on, roll on, or if they chose to, they could just hop on the bus. We wouldn't have to extend ramps or do anything like that. So again, as we move into 30%, further in the 30% design, we'll know if there's any trade-offs that we have to make as we move into the next phase. But at this point in time, all of them are planned to be level boarding stations.
Commissioner Price?
So on the project schedule, do you have time built in just in case there are delays? I mean, I'm not hoping for delays, but if something goes wrong and they don't issue the FONSI on, when you expect it, is there enough wiggle room in there that you could still make, any changes and still be on schedule?
Well,
meet all the other deadlines and be able to proceed.
But we've built some reasonable time in the schedule for things like that. If it's something that is rather significant beyond what we kind of anticipate or that we could imagine at this point in time, it would be challenged to meet the 2023 deadline. But again, that's also why we put, in addition to that 2023, all the federal stars aligning. Again, they would need to approve the project on the environmental side, and the funding would have to be in place. Again, the 2023 is, we are optimistic about that, but again, we're not going to know if that's really a reality until we move past the 30% design into probably get our rating and move into engineering. Then we'll have a better sense of saying, is that reality? Is that grounded in reality? Or is FDA saying, hey, we really like your project, but we're not going to be able to free up funding until 20X? So again, this is the best we know at this point in time.
Okay, thank you.
Additional questions? Okay, comment, Commissioner McKee.
Yes. Finally, a light at the end of the tunnel that is not attached to a light rail train. And what probably most folks in the county do not know or do not remember is that in 2011, I argued strongly that this should have been the second phase of improving transit in Orange, Durham, and the region. I also argued that the third phase should be an expansion to all points of the compass of BRT, Hillsborough, Durham, Pittsburgh, and into Burlington. So I'm very pleased that we are here. I'm slowly getting over the process and the expense of how we got here. But that's neither here nor there. That's irrelevant at this point because we are at this point. I will be just as supportive and just as adamant that we move this forward as I was that we stop light rail. This will have difficult conversations. I'll absolutely guarantee you there will be folks that do not like this in portions of Chapel Hill as much or more so than I argued against light rail. There will be folks that are going to be inconvenienced by not only the construction, but by the very presence of it. And I hate it, but we are going to have to address our transportation needs locally and then move regionally, and this is a move to that. And at some point in time, and I've put forward before in my conversations years ago, the 2045 timeframe is what I see. We'll actually have to go to something beyond BRT, and I have no idea what that'll be, but that'll be an interesting conversation when we get there. So I'm very pleased that we're here. I look forward to the conversation, and in order to start into that conversation, I don't do a lot of trips, but I'm planning Thursday and Friday to be going on a trip to the Richmond, D.C. area to learn about what I'm actually talking about.
Okay, let's move on to 6D.
And just one aside, again, we'll be happy to have the commissioner join us on that trip. And just note for those that have been to Richmond and seen that BRT project, they've been open since 2012, 16? 18, okay, thank you. Matt Cecil is our project manager for this and helped me with that date. So 2016, 2018, they were open. They're currently operating about 4,000 rides within that, with the GRT Pulse system. We're doing 4,500 in that Martin Luther King, South Columbia corridor already today. So our anticipated ridership within that corridor with the first year of construction is about 8,500 per day within that corridor is what the BRT system at 8 minutes or better during peak hours is going to be able to do for us. And 5 years out from that, the projection is about 12,000, and that assumes no development or growth at what is currently known as Carolina North. It's just everything outside of that as well. So just a sense of scale there for those projects. So thank you again.
Thanks, Brian. We weren't too bad on you, huh?
No.
You can go back and report that we were nice.
I will do so. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, Travis, let's do it.
Yep. So I won't belabor this too much, only to say that in terms of the finance as well, I want to point you to the actual amendment document. So attached in your packet is attachment 1 is the actual amendment document that would amend the transit plan that will need to be approved by the Board of Commissioners, the Go Triangle Board, and the MPO. So the current transit plan, as Brian mentioned, has 6.1 in. that was approved back in 2017. It's been consistent over that time. This amendment would provide an additional $8 million, bringing the total to 14.1. And then the amendment also stipulates that if, in fact, the town is successful in the spot process to receive offsetting funding, that we would relieve the transit plan of its financial obligations through a deliberative process. So for whatever it's worth, our financial model does indicate that we'll have about $12 million in resources available in 1920. We have, since we reviewed the work plan, there have been a couple additions. One you'll see, and I sent the board an email about the Durham Orange administrative expenses that we're working through with Go Triangle. You also see that $500,000 in the allocation to the MPO for our redoing our transit plan. In bus operations, there haven't been any changes since we talked last about the work plan. I would note that the allocation to Orange Public Transit does include some projects that would exceed the funding available to Orange County through the implementation agreement, but Theo wanted to express those as needs, and as we go through an amendment to the transit plan, that may become possible. And here are capital investments, at least the ones for 1920. You can see the new north-south BRT, $1 million. That does start in 20. I misspoke. The largest shares in 22, but starting in 20, we would space that investment, that $8 million, out over the course of 4 years. And then the other item here that was not on the draft work plan was the light rail closeout expenditures of $910,000 expected for 1920. That would be Orange County's share of those closeout dollars. Finally, on slide 8, we've got sort of how these capital investments are laid out in a multi-year sort of phased-in approach. So you'll see in 2020 there'd be we'd start the additional contribution to the BRT at $1 million. We'd go up to 1.5 in 21 and 22, and then in 23 we'd have the largest chunk of $4 million, which meets the Chapel Hill's cash flow demands, but it also is spaced out in a way that will maximize our fund balance. And then you'll see right above that blue shaded line is what was in the plan already for the north-south BRT project. These are the 2 of 3 installments. One had occurred this year for the first $6 million. You guys know how I love models. So this is our financial model laid out in a graph. So this is a 10-year look at what our transit dollars will be used for. You'll see the blue bar here are the administrative expenses. The yellow bar is total bus operations, and that would be our contributions to Chapel Hill Transit, Go Triangle, bus hours in Orange County, and Orange County Public Transportation. And then the total capital expenses are the orange share of the bar. These are all assuming that we would go ahead and approve the additional $8 million for the north-south BRT project. And then that tan line up above is what our projected revenues look like going out, at least out 4 years. And then you'll see how the capital projects drop off, and as those capital projects as that capital project spending drops off, the just amount that's available for carry forward year to year brings that amount of resources sort of up off the chart here.
So can I just ask you a question about that? So in the slide before shows the $4 million in 2023, and yet this chart shows a drop in 2023. So I'm just wondering how I reconcile those two.
Right, so there are, you'll see the total capital expenses at the bottom.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I see.
So that bar is meant to capture that total, not just the BRT portion. So you'll see they go up in 2021,
Right.
2022, and then even though the largest share of the BRT expense would be in '23, we don't have really any other capital expenditures occurring in any significant way except for $500,000 for a couple of bus stop improvements.
Got it.
So that's how that bar is operating off the total capital expenses.
I see.
Commissioner Price?
Your beige line here, the total revenue available, where is that revenue coming from?
So that's all of our dedicated transit revenue. So that's the Article 43 sales tax, vehicle rental tax, and both registration fees.
Okay, so you haven't calculated in any fares at this point?
No,
Great,
so there,
okay.
no, so there wouldn't be, at least in the dedicated transit revenues, there would not be any offsetting fare revenue.
I wouldn't think it'd be much anyway.
And I should also point out that we don't have in the operating bucket right now any additional operating expenses for the BRT, although we know that there may be some. But at least from the chart, you'll see that the transit plan can support some additional spending, especially starting in 2024. And you'll see our fund balance just sort of accumulate once those major investments are made in capital in years 2020 through 2023. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Travis?
Good question.
Commissioner Orkopoulos?
So hopefully the spot money from the state comes through and we get this $8 million reimbursed, right? Is there any discussion of how much of that, how much of a reduction from the 25 million would cause us not to get any back? Is there any sense of what the range is?
At this point, since we're only in 30% design, I don't think we would know that. But if the full 25 is awarded, there will almost certainly be some relief to the $8 million. We just don't know the magnitude of that.
It may not be all of it. It'll just be depending on the state of the
That's right.
economics at the time.
That's right.
Yeah.
Other questions? Comments?
Yeah, actually, I do have a question.
Question, Commissioner Price?
So with this 10-year fund balance analysis, is there a percentage that is, I mean, is it good practice to just continue to accumulate? Are you just saying what it would look like? Or is there a percentage that we should keep in the fund balance?
Right. So you'll see at the lowest point here, in 2022, we'd have a fund balance of $929,000. So right now, this assumes that we implement the projects that are in the current transit plan plus the BRT. And so we don't have programmed really, and as we go to update the new transit plan, we will start using these resources and asking the board to adopt a transit plan that utilizes these resources, so the fund balance, it won't continue to climb. We'll likely add services using those funds, and so that money will go into services instead of into fund balance.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I have 2 comments, if no one else has anything. So when, and I guess this could be for Brian or Travis, as you report out, whether it be to the MPO or anyone else, can we get those reports also, if you could share them with us? And I know Commissioner Dorsett does a good job of giving us a quick review of what his meeting was, but I know that you are reporting to the MPO, and it would be good if we could see those updates and get those updates as well. That shouldn't be a big deal, right?
No, and as the other boards consider the amendment, I'll report back to the board via email about what their votes are and what, if any, consternation they would have.
Okay, that's great. And as the charrettes take place and all that, it would be good to get, I don't know, whether it be quarterly updates or whenever you're updating the MPO or anyone else, it would be good to just be, so we could be in the loop. so we can answer questions. When, we represent the entire county. When people call us and ask us what's happening with the BRT, it would be good for us to have that information in front of us. And then also there is a Go Triangle meeting that's going to continue to happen, and Travis and Mark Markopoulos are going to be working on that over the summer. So if there are any questions about the email that Travis sent out to us, I would advise everyone to review that and send those questions to Mark.
Meeting
Markopoulos.
tomorrow.
When's your meeting?
Tomorrow morning.
Tomorrow morning. Okay, so if you have any comments, and then, sorry about that, that would be good to send that
I get up pretty early, so.
Send it to them at 8 o'clock in the morning. That would be great. Okay, so let's go. What we have here is a recommendation from the manager for the board to consider approving an amendment to the Orange County Transit Plan, which is Attachment 1, which increases the transit plan funding for the North-South BRT project by $8 million in fiscal years FY 2020 through FY 2022, in a total of $14.1 million. And Commissioner McKee?
Motion to approve the manager's recommendation.
And I need a second.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Price. All's in favor? Aye. Against? Okay, that passes. Again, thank you, Brian. Appreciate you being here. Number 7 is reports, and we don't have any. So now we're going to move to the consent agenda, and let's do this in an orderly fashion so I know what we're pulling, if there's anything pulled. So does anyone, no, Commissioner?
Just a comment on one of the, on 8V.
8B?
V.
8V. 8V and 8I. Anything else? We have 8I, resolution to adjust the salaries of the sheriff and register of deeds. 8V, proposed changes to the long-term housing affordable policy. Okay, if I hear none, I need a motion to pass the rest of the consent agenda.
So moved.
Commissioner McKee and Green, all's in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Okay. Let's go to, I'm sorry, against, anyone? No? Okay, 8I, Commissioner Price.
Yes, I just pulled this so that so staff could explain this, since it wasn't we didn't go over this during the budget season, and in case I get asked questions.
Okay, I'll have Brenda Bartholomew, our Human Resources Director, can respond to that.
Thank you, Brenda, welcome.
Thank you. I have been working on salary and classification reviews now for the last 3 years, and we have been working from the lowest grade of our salary schedule up through it. At this point, we have completed grade 13. Part of grade 13 was detention officer. So it was that classification where the sheriff and I had met and talked about his department once again. Earlier, probably 2 years prior to that, we did some work with respect to deputy sheriff salaries and making them competitive and equitable with towns and surrounding counties. So this kind of opened up some dialogue over the years of looking at the sheriff department. When I met with the sheriff a few weeks ago, we were at the point where we were going to look at his department as a whole and sort of wrap up the classification review and study there. That included his salary as well. So there was conversation there on how an elected official increases his salary. So, and there was some conversation, I think, along the way with some support in looking at that. So we did. So he's an elected official, so there's different requirements when we're requesting a salary increase. And from what I learned, that's under the general statutes. And we had first, when Sheriff Blackwood took office in 2014, there was a resolution, as well as the Register of Deeds elected official, to set those salaries. So the action agenda that you have before you tonight is a request, based on all those conversations, based on looking at the salaries, to increase them. How I got to the salaries may be another question. We also, as we've gone over the last 3 or 4 years with our reviews, we look at the recommendations made, whether it's a reallocation of grade, whether it's a reclassification, and we're only giving increases to employees who are compressed. As you remember, we started back in, I think, 15, 16, in addressing compression. And it was then that the county manager made a 12.5% recommendation for a compression adjustment. The following year, we did a 6.25% compression adjustment to all employees. We never included directors in any of those conversations at that time. From then on, we necessarily haven't had any funded money, but we have been consistently applying 25% to compression anytime we have the opportunity to look at those salary grades when a study is complete. So here, I looked at the salaries for the sheriff, and he, in the scheme of how we apply our compression formula, as well as the 25%, his salary was at 100% should be 142,000 plus some money. I don't have it right in my head. So from there, I looked at the market just to be sure. And when I did look at our supporting counties, his salary at his current salary, which I think is about 121,000, was very low comparatively to Guilford County, comparatively to Wake County, and most comparatively to Durham County, which is something that we do in our studies too. We always look at what we call our competitive counties, and made the recommendation based on that analysis, as well as the formula that we've been applying to any reviews over the last 3 to 4 years.
And the same for the Register of Deeds, correct?
Same for the Register of Deeds, that is correct, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Additional questions? Okay, Commissioner Price, you want to move aye?
I move that agenda item.
Need a second? Second. Second by Green. All in favor? Aye. Against? Okay, thank you. Let's go to V, please.
Yeah, I just, V is a very technical item about changes to long-term housing affordability policy and reporting requirements as required by HUD. And I just want to point out for anyone who's paying attention is that HUD's requirements for affordability are typically no more than 40 years. We have the DHIC project in Chapel Hill is a low-income housing tax credit project. The low-income housing tax credit mechanism is the biggest renter safety net in the country for the 30 years it's existed. It has produced over 3 million units, but often those units are owned by James Etta probably knows about this. They're syndicates. They're really to get for investors to get tax credits over a period of time, and when that period is exhausted, then those investors are done, and often those units go on the open market, and they're just not affordable anymore. We're lucky in our area to have DHIC, which is a committed nonprofit housing provider that is committed to keeping those units affordable after that period of time indefinitely. CASA is another. We hope they will get their low-income housing tax credits this August, and they don't plan to sell them off in 30 years. And also we have the Home Trust, which has ground leases that go for 99 years. We have the county's program for first-time home buyers, which also is for 99 years through deed restrictions. So we, just to note that in this area, we're doing everything we can to maintain permanent affordability.
Thank you, Commissioner Green. Any other questions on V? Okay, Commissioner Green, you want to move that?
So moved. 8V.
Second.
Second by Price. All in favor? Aye. Against? Okay, great. We got through 8. County Manager's Report.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Commissioners. I'd just like to take the opportunity to actually thank all the department directors and the employees of the county that helped me put together a recommended budget for you all, and also to thank you for your support through the process. I look forward to working with you in the fall on improving the process. We as staff will bring forward some options for you to make it a more transparent and open process process for everyone so that we feel better about the process when we're done. But thank you all for the budget that you put together for the county, and I look forward to enforcing it. Thanks.
Thank you. County Attorney.
Yeah, just want to address some of what you heard earlier in the public comment. You heard a lot of comment about shooting and noise. And as a reminder, the board has looked at this before in depth, and I've sent quite a few times. I've sent some information about the current status of the law. I will send that again. And I even heard from a few of the people that they may understand that the legislature has put some restrictions in place. And so I'll tell you, as a reminder, you can add firearms discharge noise to the noise ordinance. What that would do, though, is it would only apply prospectively against sports shooting ranges. The legislature has exempted those from retroactive nuisance or noise regulation by local governments. And a sports shooting range is defined as an area that is operated or maintained for shooting activities. That's about as broad as you can get. So generally, a noise ordinance that prohibits gunfire noise or limits it would apply to random discharge, shooting up in the air or something, or to sports shooting ranges, which covers just about all shooting ranges prospectively. Doesn't apply to anything that exists currently, and that's problematic. And I've communicated that to the public multiple times at some committee meetings that we had, and the legislature continues to expand that. Last night, the Senate passed a new bill that is now sitting in the House that will further exempt gunfire and shooting activities from local regulation, in that it will exempt from land use ordinances all that activity, whether it's indoor or outdoor, because it's going to classify those shooting activities as agritourism. So even an indoor shooting range going forward, if this bill passes, would be exempt from land use laws of counties across the state. So I know you're going to want to hear this and address this at a meeting in the fall, and we'll do that. And hopefully this bill won't pass, but I'll be glad to reiterate this and encourage people to contact the General Assembly to voice their displeasure.
Thank you, John.
Now, when you say applies prospectively, that means only would apply if someone established a sport shooting area in the future, but one that's in existence now would be exempt even going forward?
Correct. So what was described was something with a berm. What I heard anyway from the complaints was an area that's regularly used for shooting and has a berm and some kind of backstop. That falls within that definition. It's a very broad definition, and so that I think would not be subject to a noise restriction or a noise ordinance, but only going forward.
But, I mean, just to be clear, not activities on that facility going forward, only on a new facility.
Correct. Yeah, right. If I was not being clear, only a new sports shooting range. Anything that's in existence, it would not be affected.
That's just wanted to clarify that. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Yeah, we'll have that conversation in the fall again. I think it's worth it. I mean, we'll gather up information and do it, so. All right, folks, we have a couple of appointments to make. So 11A is the Animal Service Advisory appointments, and there have been a couple recommended, 2, 7, and 12. 12, Dr. Beth Grooms. Bob Morato is requesting an additional year, or possibly, as you read through the agenda, a whole term of 3 years. And Donna, do you want to fill us in on this? You need to talk into the mic so David
When
doesn't.
Dr. Grooms came on, originally, her original appointment was for a partial term. She came in over 2 years. And then she fulfilled her second 3-year term. So she had less than 6 years, and Bob because it is a specific position and it is hard to fill, he wanted to give her another whole 3 years, which in chair, vice chair, we discussed it and just suggested recommending just a 1-year extension at this time. And that would give her way over 6 years as her term.
Right, and then within that 1 year, we were also asking that they find someone to take her place. So a year's time seemed to be a reasonable amount of time, unless you all want to go with Bob's recommendation of an additional term. So that's where we are with Animal Services. Discussion, comments, nominations. Commissioner Bedford.
Move we appoint position number 2, Dr. Lee Pickett, position number 7, Edmund Turiakian, I'm probably saying that wrong, and position 12, 1-year extension for Dr. Beth Grooms.
Second.
Okay, so a second by Price. Comments, other nominations? Okay. All's in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Awesome. Against? Okay, so that is 11. The Animal Service Hearing Panel. Let's do that one next.
And there is one correction on the position that is vacant, position number 15 at the bottom of the page. The expiration date should read 3/31/2022, not 3/1/2019. We apologize for that.
Okay,
Oh,
everyone
yeah,
everyone catch that? Okay, so what would the board like to do on that one?
I'll nominate Jennifer Stout for position 6.
Who was that?
Jennifer, I think it's Stout. I mistyped her name. Hold on.
Jennifer Spout?
Yeah.
Second.
Okay, any other nominations? All right, Jennifer Spout, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Against? Great. C is the Arts Commission appointment, and this is number 3, and this is a partial term? And
It's just a 1-year term.
We're gonna
because
explain-
It's a UNC
this
student,
was the
because
UNC
y'all
student.
approved this position
Right.
last year.
Okay, so we need motion on that,
I'll nominate Rachel Despard.
Second.
and second by Price, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Against? Okay, great. Economic Development Advisory Board.
Position number 3, nominate Kristen Smith Young.
Second.
Got a second by Green. All those in favor? Aye. Against? Okay. That moved along. Board of Health appointment is E.
I'll nominate Dr. Aparna Jonal.
Second.
Okay. Any other nominations? I don't think there are. That's for position 10.
Right.
Okay. All right, let's take that one first. Okay, we have a second by Commissioner Price. All in favor?
Aye.
Against? Okay. And what's happening with position 1 and position 6,
Okay,
Donna?
the veterinarian is on the Animal Services Advisory Board. They have 2 veterinarians. One veterinarian, which is Susan Elmore, has resigned, and that first veterinarian is also appointed to the Board of Health. They serve 2 roles, okay? So veterinarian 1 on the Animal Services Advisory Board is vacant, and so is this one. And so Bob Morato and Quintana Stewart will be working together to try to fill that position, because that position is on both boards, and they want to vet someone that will be able to serve on both boards for the veterinary position.
I nominate Dr. Allison Stubbe for position 6.
Second.
Okay, we have Allison Stubbe for position 6. Any other nominations?
Just a question. So you're choosing not to wait for the recommendation from staff?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm choosing to fill the seat.
Okay, we have Allison Stubbe in a second. All those in favor? Aye. Against? Okay, so that is taken care of. And then we're going to go to F, the Human Relations Commission. And Donna, do you want to talk a little bit about this? It may seem a little complicated, but it's not actually.
You approved an item on the consent agenda about reducing the number of positions on the HRC. The board had asked the HRC last spring to reduce these positions, and they're just now bringing it forward. So it is a reduction. So the two positions that they are suggesting are position number 12 and 15. And the positions that remain vacant are the ones at the bottom of the page and on the next page. And the reason why there are so many vacancies is because we could not fill any positions on the board until they decided which positions they were going to reduce it by. So now that this has been approved on the consent agenda, we will now start advertising for these positions that we know are going to be on the board going forward. They've gone from 18 to 12 positions.
So tonight, we're doing position number 12 and 15.
Yes, there.
And then they will advertise for the other positions, and we have reduced the board. I was concerned that the board was an even number. I don't know if anyone feels the same about that, but we already moved that on a different agenda. But you get a tie, you're in trouble. Okay, so 12 and 15. Need a motion?
I'll nominate Stephanie Harrell for 12 and Dr. Deborah Stroman for 15.
I need a second.
Second.
Second by Green. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Against? Okay, great.
Wait, so we're not allowed to make any nominations for the other positions at this time?
Are those the ones we want to leave vacant?
Well, they're not going to be vacant. I think that they want the opportunity to now get applications in now that they've made the board. But if you have
There are applicants on this list, right? We have a list of people who have applied.
that fit the positions. We need the at-large, Town of Carrboro, at-large, at-large.
So we've removed the ones, the excess. They're
The
not-
excess is already removed.
Excess is
Okay.
gone.
Well, I would nominate James Spivey for the Chapel Hill position, and I would nominate Jamie Paulin for one of the at-large positions.
Second.
Spivey for Chapel Hill, Jamie Paulin for at-large. Any additional?
Yeah, I would nominate Beecham for Town of Carrboro.
There actually isn't a Chapel Hill position, there's a Carrboro
There's-
position, so I want to correct my nomination to make it both at-large.
Both at-large, okay. And then
I was nominating Samantha Beecham for the Town of Carrboro.
Samantha Beecham, okay. Carrboro.
You need a second?
Hang on one second, let's see what we got left then. Okay, so we got 1, 2, 2 at large, and we actually have 4 to fill. Does anyone else want to make any nominations?
Yeah, I'll nominate Francis Castillo for at large.
Okay, one more at large. Anyone up for that one?
We'll have one more to fill.
Got only one more? Okay.
Sally?
Wait a minute.
Mark?
Wait a minute, was that for Francis the fourth?
So
No, we've got one more at large to go.
James Spivey, Jamie Pollan.
At large, Jamie
At large.
Paulin at large, Francis De Soto at large, and Sarah Beecham at Carrboro. So we have one more at large.
Or we could leave that one till, you know.
Okay.
Yeah, we can give them one.
Okay, so we have those 3. So we have a Carrboro and 3 at large.
Right.
And so, let's get a second on that because we had a couple of
Second.
nominations. Okay, second for Price. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Against? Okay, awesome. Thank you, Mark Dorson, for letting us do that, or guiding us to do that. The Mebane Planning Board, 11G.
I'll nominate Keith Hoover for position 1.
Okay,
Second.
second by Price. All those in favor?
Aye.
Against?
Yeah.
Okay, and then we have 11H, which is the Housing Authority appointments.
I'll nominate Evelyn Johan for number 1, and Tammy Jacobs, number 3, and Paul Reynolds, number 6.
Second.
Second by Bedford. All in favor? Aye. Against? Okay.
And the climate committee
Is
was
deferred,
pulled, and
or-
we will
yeah.
start advertising tomorrow. We've already drafted an advertisement. We have let Commissioner Markopoulos take a look at it, as well as Brendan Roma, and then we will start advertising tomorrow.
Try to get that on the first meeting
Right.
of September.
We have put a deadline for applications as August 1st, for
Okay.
a second.
How are the towns doing with those appointments? Do we have all
I
the?
have not heard, I have not
Okay.
heard, we have not heard anything back
So
from them yet.
can we follow up with that? All right, great. Information items 12, everyone has that. We have no closed session. Need a motion to adjourn for
Wait a minute,
this
we did
session. It's already did
Oh,
that.
yeah, we did
Yeah.
that, okay. So moved.
Too late. McGee did it.
Okay.
All right, all's in favor? All right, everyone, have a great break. Thank you so much.